Welcome to The Route to Revenue, two entrepreneurs sharing the path to curbside cash flow. I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. We're both founders of two successful recurring revenue businesses in the home services industry, and we've built our companies from startup to profitable and scalable operations.
This is the show for entrepreneurs serious about building sustainable home service businesses. Whether you're starting out, scaling up, or ready to move beyond trading time for money, we share proven strategies for creating predictable monthly revenue streams.
And while our expertise comes from the bin cleaning industry, the systems and principles we discuss work for any recurring revenue home service. Think lawn care, pest control, pool maintenance, and beyond.
Each episode, we break down real-world strategies for customer acquisition, retention, operational efficiency, and building systems that generate consistent income while you step back from daily operations.
Are you ready to transform your home service businesses from a demanding job into a profitable asset? This is The Route to Revenue.
Hello, I'm Ben Magee with Green Can Cleaner, and I'm here with Mike Walker with Spiffy Bin. Say hi, Mike.
Good morning, Ben. How you doing today?
I'm great. How's everything going with you?
It's going well.
Good.
I don't know when everybody's listening to this, but Thanksgiving's next week, so we're excited about getting into that and having the family come home and do all that fun stuff. So it's an exciting time for sure.
That it is. So is everybody coming home for Thanksgiving this year?
Yeah, I've got two. I've got one that lives in the city. I'm out of Atlanta, so there's one that lives down inside the perimeter, and then she's 26, and then I've got a 17-year-old who's in high school, so she lives with us obviously at the house. And then I've got our middle daughter is in Louisiana, New Orleans, so she'll be flying in on Tuesday or Wednesday. She hasn't decided yet. I think she's driving. She looked at the prices, and now that she's paying for her flights, pricing is important to her.
Funny how that changes, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. All of a sudden lights go off and heat goes down or AC goes up, one of those two things. It's not, I'm too hot. I should turn the air down to 20. It's, let's take off some layers of clothing or whatever. So anyways.
Yeah, let's open a window.
What are we going to talk about today, Ben?
Well, why don't we talk about hiring and when to hire? And, I think that's one of the most common questions that we get is, when should I hire? So I know for me, I see all the time, you should get out of the truck as soon as you can. What are your thoughts on that?
I heard that as well. And I think there is some value to that, but I think it all depends on where you're starting from. My plan was, get a route full, buy a second truck, hire a driver, get the second route full, buy a third truck, get the driver, and then fill that third route. And, it all really depends on your price point. I think if your higher ticket items, maybe it's easier to get out of the truck faster. Maybe it's a little bit more critical. On some of our lower price tickets, like what I experience and what we experience is, it takes a little bit longer. The runway's a little bit longer where maybe you have to be in the truck. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And the other thing that I'd say is, I think hire for your weakness. So for me, as far as being in the truck and trying to do everything was brutal. So I needed some help once I got some routes built up and the phone was ringing and emails were coming in. But I'll tell you that what I ended up doing was I actually hired an office manager. I had a situation come up where I was really fortunate, and I had a good friend of ours that was way overqualified for the job, that was close to retirement. And she was like, I was talking about, I need to hire someone to do all of this stuff. And she says, hire me. And I went, right. You're way overqualified. And she said, hire me. Let me help. Yeah. And, but that allowed me to stay on the truck, but still have those other things taken off my plate and get done.
Yes.
And that was a big deal for me. Because, and even, I was on a route the other day and, it's getting a little colder here. I'm in Colorado and as it gets a little colder, sales slow down. And I was on a route, and the guys that have been on the routes have been telling me, "Oh, we can't sell. Nobody's buying this right now," you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I sell 2 accounts while I'm on one route.
Nice.
You know,
Excellent job.
I'm yeah, I mean, it's one of those, nobody is going to be able to do the job quite as well as the owner of the business. And
They
I
won't.
firmly believe that.
Yeah, I firmly believe that as well. But until there's a way to clone ourselves, and my understanding is we're getting a little bit closer because I heard Tom Brady cloned his dog, perhaps. So maybe that's coming along. But until we're able to clone ourselves, nobody's going to care about the business more than we care about the business.
Well,
but
and cloning brings up its own thing. I can't imagine having 2 of me running around.
Fair. That's a great point. There's a movie too where every episode, was it Multiplicity, with what's his name? Oh, I can't remember his name, but basically he clones himself and he gets just a little bit dumber, and then they clone him again and he gets just a little bit dumber, and then after a while there he's just a complete moron. And I can't remember his name. It'll come to me. But anyways, so there's certain pain points, right, that are going to signal when it's time to hire. I noticed for me, you'd mentioned the admin thing, and I forgot about that. I looked at my first hire as the driver, but in reality it was my mom. And she didn't get hired. She didn't get paid anything, but she would answer the phone for me 3 days a week or whatever. And she had her own little computer there. She set up her little desk, and it was great, because when you're out in the truck and running, the last thing you want to do is answer a phone. Potentially. I mean, you do it, but you might be out of the truck, or it's loud, or what have you. So, as far as pain points go, I noticed that I was running into times where I might miss an appointment, right? It didn't get entered in from the night before. I didn't check email at, first thing in the morning before I went out. And turns out we'd had a couple signups and, overnight, and they didn't get entered because it was waiting for mom to do it. And ultimately that just meant I drove by it. Now, luck of the draw, right? It doesn't happen every day, but that was it. Some of the other things that we ran into is, working until 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night, because maybe you don't start until 11 because you are doing the admin stuff in the morning. And then you try to run your route from noon to whatever time it took. And those are all good pains to have, but at some point they become detrimental. Would you agree?
Absolutely. So, and I think I'd add to that. One thing that I noticed was, and when I knew it was time to get someone, was kind of like you're saying, I was working a bunch of hours, and what it did was it allowed me to concentrate on what I was doing. And I don't think I cut my hours back because but the routes took less time because I wasn't trying to answer the phone and clean a can and do email. And so
Sure.
It allowed me to condense that time and be more efficient, which in a way did get me out of the truck partially. And
Right.
So I do kind of believe that is the role, is to get yourself out of the truck. But I think that a lot of guys try and concentrate on that and do it way too soon. What do you think about that, Mike?
I agree. I agree. I think there's a little bit of both too, right? Like I know I got in the habit where I think I might have been in a little bit too long, to be honest with you, and whatnot. But I think you get into this situation, like for instance, a route for me, for any of my drivers might be $800 to $1,000, maybe $1,500, depending on what it is for the day. And you go, so you think, oh, I'm out running this route, I just made $1,500. Well, you didn't, right? Because you can hire a guy to do that for, say, $150 or $200. So all you made is $150 or $200. And I don't mean all you made, but it you know what I'm saying? But I mean, at the end of the day, you could have put a gentleman in there or a woman in there to run that route, and it would have cost you $150. So you have to decide your best use of time too. But I was really apprehensive with my first hire. The worst thing I think could happen, at least for me right now, is hire somebody and then in 6 weeks or a month or 8 weeks realize I don't have the money for them, I don't have the jobs for them, it's not busy enough for them, and I got to let them go. I don't like to do that. I wouldn't want to do that because it's my fault. If they do something wrong, that's one thing, right? That's an easy thing. But because I did poor planning or didn't forecast far enough in advance to realize that this is just a temporary hiccup that we need somebody, I would hate for that to be the reason.
Well, and I think that that's where, and I know that, you use the profit first method. And I think that that's where the wisdom of that method comes in, because you can look at that payroll account if you're already putting a percentage in there, and you can go, oh, look at this. We're putting enough in that we can afford that $150 or $200 a day, plus the payroll taxes and all of that. It makes it to where that you can actually see what's happening rather than guessing. And so when you're starting out, I do believe that profit first method is just invaluable.
Yeah, and for those that don't know about it, it's a book, an audio book, and as well as a physical in-print book. Mike McAllowitz, he's got a lot of business books. What do you think? He's got about 7 or 8, if not more, business books.
Maybe more.
And in the audio version, he actually reads it or reads it to you. So, when I was in the truck, I like to listen to music a little bit, but I kind of feel like I'm wasting time a little bit if I'm listening. There it is. There it is in our picture here. But I feel like I'm wasting time. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and some of them are, whoa, you okay back there?
I'm all right.
Didn't fall.
All right. Just making a mess.
Okay. All right. Perfect. But, with that book, it was great. The premise behind it is you got a bucket of money. All your money comes into one account, and that'd be your income account. And then from there, you split that bucket into 5, I think, is the minimum number he recommends, up to like 9 or 10, depending on how many buckets you need. And so $1,000 comes in, and 400 goes to payroll or OPEX, operational expenses, and then maybe 200 goes to employees, and 200 goes 20% and 20%. You break it up to make it 100% basically. And what's nice about that is when it's time to spend that money, it's almost like you've given yourself permission. I've got the money here. This is what it's for. Let's use it for what it's for, whether that's buying supplies or that's buying an employee's time. So it's a great, I think that's a great book for those that maybe haven't delved into that yet. But before you get into that, you got to figure out the numbers. So what did you do when you first decided? I know you got the manager, the office manager. What did you do when you said it was time for a driver?
Truly, I was using a trailer. I was using an SB2 behind my pickup, and I acquired another business, and it put me in. I was right at that threshold where I was getting to where that I needed truck number 2. Mm-hmm. And when I was able to acquire that other business, it came with a truck. And so at that point was when I knew, and the numbers were definitely there. I mean, in my profit first payroll account, I had, I won't say tons of money, but plenty to be able to pay a driver for sure. And so, it was just kind of a natural transition for me. It was almost like someone said, you know what, you're probably too dumb to figure this out, Ben. So let me just put it out in front of you, and here it is.
So can I ask you, you had
the money.
Oh, sorry. You had that cash flow. You had that cash flow, or you had that quote unquote bucket of money. So to amass that bucket of money, were you running a little ragged for a while?
It was certainly, the routes were long. And like I said, we were almost to capacity on that SB2. Some would say that we were over capacity, that I was over capacity. I think at that point we were at like right around 1,000 recurring customers, which, for an SB2, that's a decent amount. And so where are you going to put them? Routes were taking 8 to 9 hours a day. It was time,
Yeah.
What about you? When did you figure out that you needed to make that first hire, and how did that work as far as drivers go?
Mine was, our first year we started in December, so I don't really call December a year, but that next year, December to December, I guess, I think we ended with like 350 clients or something like that, recurring. I only talk about recurring it. The one-timers are just kind of nice gravy.
Yeah.
And then at the second year, COVID hit in February, March or whatever. And my goodness, it just, everybody signed up. I think we went from 350 or so up to almost 1,400. So it was a great second year. And right as that year was ending, and of course it doesn't happen overnight, right? So it took most of that summer to get to that number. But we got up there pretty quick. And then that was when truck 2 was ordered. And I actually received that truck in December of, I guess, year 2. And I remember at the time I didn't have a driver yet, and we were going on vacation at the end of December, and I needed to get 2 weeks worth done, or the following week done, and it probably could have been done if I worked till 9, 10 every night or whatever. But in December it gets dark early. And so I actually put my daughters, at the time I had a 20, she was 21 maybe. I'm just guessing, 21 and 19. And so they ran together for that week. They were off. Both of them were off for school. One was off of college. One was off of, maybe she was 18. I don't know, whatever. One was off of high school. And so they ran a route, put them on the insurance, did that whole thing. And they ran that second route, which would have been the week we were gone. And it worked out great. And when we got back from our vacation, hired the guy, started looking in January, hired him in February, and then just kind of slowly worked into it. And, but it frees you up, right? And you have to look at some point you're going to plateau. I mean, you can only do 1,000 or 1,500 customers yourself for so long. And all you've done is bought yourself a job. Do you want to have a job or do you want to have a business? And I know when it was time to buy that second truck, my wife was like, whoa, I thought we were just doing one. Like, what's this all about? Now we're going to have a second one? I'm like, well, yeah, because otherwise I'm just going to have to do this all the time. And it took a little, cajoling or what have you, but we got it. And the rest is kind of history. So, I think we looked at having that second driver. Is he going to be as fast as us? No. As you and I?
No.
Probably not.
No.
Is he going to maybe do as well? He could do as well, but it's going to sacrifice some time. Personally, I think I can do as well and be faster because, it's my thing, right? The sooner we get it done and move on, the more efficient we are. And at the end of the day, you're ultimately not getting paid. I mean, you're getting paid, right? But you're not getting paid. So like your hours are what you're trying to minimize and get it done effectively and efficiently. So, and that's a little contrary to somebody that works hourly. Their goal is to, I don't want to say milk the clock, but it's certainly not super efficient. It's not their goal typically.
Right. So it sounds like maybe, because there's different ways to hire, right? I mean, there's a part-time worker, there's a full-time, and there's a subcontractor as well. And I mean, I see people use all three of these in this business. Now, I'm going to tell you that the subcontractor model, I just don't get. I mean, if you look at what the qualifications are to make someone a subcontractor and 1099 them.
But Ben, it sounds so good.
Using your equipment.
It sounds so good, though. We don't have to pay payroll taxes.
Equipment,
they pay the taxes.
Yeah.
Come on, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Wouldn't it be a great solution if it was just legal?
Yes. Yes.
And a lot of people, I don't know that it's ethical either.
No, I agree. And they try to do the pay per can too. What are your thoughts on? I don't know how that even rolls into that. Is that ultimately, could that be considered a full-time tech? I mean, I guess as long as at the end of the day you've paid a minimum wage, you've accomplished that. But some people do pay per can or per stop.
Well, so here's what I think on that is, I think that you should, and we try and pay everyone fairly and even generously. Okay. And so I think if you take a part-time worker or a full-time worker and you give them a base pay And I think it's okay to say, and the way that we do it today is we say, okay, if this route's done in this amount of time, and, we have routing programs that we can put the routes into, and they're pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can look at that person and say, hey, you know what, here's how long this route should take. If you can do it in this amount of time, I'm going to give you this much an hour as a bonus. I think that's entirely reasonable, and it incentivizes them to go get that route done in a timely manner. Whereas if you're just paying them an hourly rate, kind of like you were saying, what's in it for them to finish it any faster?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I do believe, I don't know necessarily that a per can, although we have looked at that, and I'd like to figure out a way to do a per can override or something like that.
Yeah.
But certainly the timing of the route being done has worked for us. But what are your thoughts between, do you kind of dip your toe in the water and hire someone part-time, or do you just jump in and do a full-time worker?
I mean, I think it depends on your, we've talked about it in other episodes, your runway, how much money you have. Are you able to, sustain them for a period of time and maybe not have work for them? Part-time obviously would be your lowest risk, right? If you have certain days, and I know this as well as I do, but you run into situations where you'll have Tuesdays are just stupid and they're just so busy, and there's nothing you can do. You only have 4 of them, in a month or so. So you just got to figure it out. Or, there might be, situations where just particular Tuesdays, right? Just so happens that a bunch of quarterlies align. Well, maybe we need to move them to the following month, perhaps, or something along that lines, right? Full-time technicians are great when you're already ready to go. If you have pretty well established routes and you've got 25 or 30, stops, we'll say, or 20 or 25 stops per day, roughly for the month, that's great. You sprinkle in a couple 30 or 40 stops and, whatever your numbers are that work for you, during that month, that's fantastic. And then as you build, so I always like to run around 80% capacity is kind of my thought process. That way, if and when, it's not if, it's when you have a breakdown, when you have a call in, when you have a storm, all those things are going to happen. And if you're trying to run at 100% capacity every single day, you're going to burn out, and then you're going to run into situations where you're just going to lose that revenue because you're not going to be able to perform. If every day is full and you're booked out for 2 years, we'll say, well, if something happens and the truck breaks down, you're SOL. And I think preparing yourself for that, but it also having that full-time guy, you're going to be freed from the truck, at least for a little bit. Whether it's just, you're doing a half days. Okay. In the beginning, if it was 25 or under, it was only him. If we got to 30, 35, well, I might pick off 5 or 10. If you got up to 40, I might pick off 10, that type of deal. Until we built to the point where both of us were pretty much going out all the time. Then it was time to buy another truck or grab another driver, I guess. And initially it didn't make sense for me to have another driver if that truck wasn't really going out every day, that second truck, in my mind. So that's kind of how we handled it. And, ultimately I think it's worked out well. There's no one right answer, I would say, other than subcontractors aren't something you can use unless they have their own equipment. And then they're probably bin cleaners. So, or, lawnmowers or whatever, that type of deal.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? Pretty on point, or do you have a different mindset?
Yeah, I think you're right on point. And, the other thing that I'd say is it's tough to hire a part-time worker for this because we need them for a full day, because it's not like, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, come in for 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
We need them, like for us right now, I could use a part-timer Monday and Tuesday. Mm-hmm. We're putting all the trucks on the road, and I'm going and helping even with all the trucks on the road just to get stuff done. So we could use someone else on Monday and Tuesday, but how do you get someone that's going to come spend the day Monday and Tuesday and not the rest of the week? And so, um, it's
It's certainly
just
going to take
tough when you
longer,
get.
right? Certainly going to take longer to find that person that's going to be able to fit that
Absolutely.
niche. And it might be Monday and
Yeah.
Tuesday this week, and next week it might be Thursday, and the following week it might be Wednesday, right? And those are going to be hard to
Right.
do. But if you find somebody that
Well,
says, you know what, I just need 20 hours, perhaps, and I've got flexibility. I just, maybe I'm retired. Maybe instead of being a Walmart greeter at 55, the guy wants to be out on the truck and enjoying the day. I don't know. It's possible,
I don't
right?
know.
It's just, I think it's harder, for sure.
Yeah, it's certainly tougher. And so, for us, I mean, I fill in here and there. Like I said, I help, and then
Yep.
we're just hiring another technician, and we'll do them full time. And then, when you get to the other thing is when you get to a certain point, I mean, right now, a slow day for us is like, you know, uh, 80 stops. So there's still 20 stops a piece, and
Mm-hmm.
we can have them go put out can stickers or something like that. I mean, there's things that they can do when you get to a certain size in business, a certain scale, then I don't know that part-time versus full-time is going to make that big of a difference. Having another full-time tech, there's always something to do. So, you know, and money's not quite as tight as it used to be. And so I'm not worried if someone ends up with an extra, 10
No,
hours
because
or
there's
something.
going to be days. There's going to be days where instead of 80, you had 120. So in that
Exactly.
particular, in that particular day or week or whatever, you're doing really well those days. Or you're going to have a
Right.
situation
Well,
where you have 35 homes in one neighborhood and the guy will be done in 5 hours. That's fantastic too, right? I mean, so
Well, and most of our Mondays and Tuesdays that I'm saying they're so big, and they are, it's 200 plus stops. So in those days, it kind of makes up for the rest of the week.
yeah,
And with
100%.
our targeted marketing that we've been doing, we've kind of started leveling the days out. So we've got some Thursdays that are getting up there as well. So it's a good thing. Um,
Perfect.
so what do you need in place before you hire someone? What kind of preparation do you do other than the money?
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to know the process inside and out. Most likely you've been on that truck, so the process. You've run into pretty much everything that could happen, right? So you've got to have that, but the guy coming in isn't in your head, right? So checklists, workflows, that type of thing is going to be critical so that they're not always asking you. You may or may not be able to have a complete handbook, but if you had, hey, if this happens, what do you do? You're going to get calls, right? And as you should, and you want the
Yeah.
people to be comfortable doing that. But it comes down to, do I want to get that same call every time I hire somebody, when if I just wrote it down over here or explained it during training, that I don't have to do that. I think you've got to have pricing, right? The pricing's got to be correct. And we talked about that in the pricing episode. When we priced our products, it was priced as if there was a driver in there long before there was a driver in there. Didn't make sense to go, well, all this is coming in my pocket, so I'm going to charge, 50% of what it should be if I had a driver, because then you're immediately going to have to raise rates. So you price it accordingly to support a driver and all the things that go along with that, whether it's payroll taxes or paid time off, holidays, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Let me jump in there for a second, because I'm going to say that I watch this, and, these guys that are pricing these services so low, and they do it because they don't have any assistance, any help. It's just them. And they're like, well, I can do it for this and I can make a nice living. And then when they hire someone and raise prices at the same time, well, guess what just happened? You just raised your prices, you lost a certain percentage of business, and now this guy that you just hired, you don't have enough work for him. And so why not just put the prices where they should be and move forward that way? So to your point, I think that pricing plays into every aspect of a recurring revenue business.
Absolutely. And as you add
So,
people, costs come along, right? I mean,
yep.
every 2 weeks you're going to have payroll due. And I'll tell you, if you ever want to feel a little tightness in your stomach, know that it's payroll time and you're like, it's getting a little tough around here, or what have you,
We're
right?
close.
So,
Yeah.
um, and you don't want to run into that situation. So, but and then, the other parts of it, you're going to have to figure out the training aspect. How are you going to do the training? How are you going to set up your HR system? We train, they go out in the truck with me for 4 days. 2 days, usually I'm driving, and then 2 days they're on the insurance and they're driving. And then it could be more, it could be less, depending on how it's never less. And then, the payroll system, you got to figure out how to do the payroll, right? You can do it through QuickBooks or Gusto or ADP or payroll or what have you. But you got to have that. And don't try to cheapen it. In my opinion, don't pay cash. Don't skimp on workers' comp, because if you work in neighborhoods and you try to get commercial business, they're going to want your workers' comp insurance. They're going to want your COIs of other products as well. Whether it's general liability or your truck insurance or what have you. But again, no, go ahead.
On that, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to say that just be a decent human being. Carry the proper insurance so that if your guy gets hurt on the job, he has something to fall back on. That's really important here, is just be a decent human being and carry those insurances. And if that's not enough for you, then know that, if you put a truck on the road and you don't have the workman's comp and you don't have insurance on the truck, automobile insurance on the truck, and you don't have a general liability insurance, then when something happens, because believe me, it's going to, you're on the hook, and you're the one that didn't have the coverage. And so they're coming to you. And it just, if being a decent human being and taking care of the other people involved isn't enough, think about yourself and go, hey, wait a minute. Do I really want to be responsible if this guy, falls down and hits his head on something and is in the ER?
You could lose it all.
Just don't do it. Yeah.
You could lose it all.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
yeah. So how do you manage the first employee?
I think you got to do a lot of checking in. We check in, I check in every morning. Typically, I am in the shop, as they're heading out, doing a couple, 3-5 minutes with each person, 10 minutes sometimes. What's going on? How you doing? Any questions, any issues? You kind of, in my opinion, you want to get to know them, right? Because they're representing your business. And if they don't know you and like you, I'm going to guess they're not going to present the best image to your customers or your future customers. That kind of thing, kind of training them, trying to, up them. I'm always trying to help make them better, whether it's, they've got financial issues or they've got this or that or what have you. How can I help them? How can I help them through things that I've learned over my 53 years? And there's certain techniques and, skills or whatever that I've learned that, if they put into place, whether I did or not at their age is irrelevant. I know they're good things to have or to do. And, I think that's one way, myself. How about yourself?
I agree with that. I think that, the other things that are really, and we've kind of touched on them, but I think that you've got to set the expectations. There's nothing worse than having a job and not knowing what's expected of you. And so I think that you've got to define the quality, you've got to define the timeline, and you've got to define how they communicate both with your client and with you. And so I think that those are the really important parts of setting expectations and letting someone know, that their job matters. The other thing that I think is, I'm constantly asking our guys for feedback. I want to know if there's something wrong with the truck, if there's a process that we could improve. I want the feedback from them on whether or not they like their job. I want them to know that they can come to me with anything. And kind of like you were saying, it's amazing how much I learn about them just by keeping that door open and making sure that they know that it's open. So,
yeah, No, I think that's
But there's
great.
also a place where that could turn into a lecture, and you don't want to do that either. I mean, nobody wants their boss to come give them a lecture every day. So,
Right.
um,
They'll get there early though. They'll start beating you to the shop and getting out quick before you get there. I mean, there is that plus.
there is that plus. Yep.
Yeah, I think to close it out, and we didn't talk about it, but I think it's a great ad. You're going to go backwards before you go forwards too with that hire. It's going to cost you more. It's going to feel like, oh my God, I could do it so much faster if I just did it. You can, but you can't do it as many times as if you repeat yourself with multiple people. So even somebody that does 70% faster than you, it's a win because you're not doing it. For you to do it, it's 100% of your time. So, in my opinion, if you are comfortable with going backwards a little bit and feeling like I'm not making as much as I did, well, in reality, all that money wasn't yours. Some of that was the business to reinvest in the business. And, it may feel good to take that larger draw, but in reality, it's also going to feel pretty good to know that you don't have to be out there doing. You can be out there creating.
So there's a book that I read and I love and I reference it a lot. It's called Buy Back Your Time. And in it, one of the things that he says is 80% done by someone else is 100% awesome. And so,
And I like
I
that
love
one.
that saying, and I remind myself of that all the time. But yeah, it definitely would feel, there's going to be times where it feels like you might be going backward a little bit in order to go forward. And, it feels risky, but if it's the right timing and you have the systems in place and, then that risk factor goes way down. And so, it's a weird feeling watching your truck drive out of the property gate the first time without you in it.
How about when you pass one? I had one the other day. It's coming. I'm like, who is that with? Oh my gosh, that's one of my trucks. And I knew they were in the area, but I didn't recall, I didn't know they were going to be in the area when I went by them. It's the funniest. Yeah. It's satisfying, right? I mean, that's why we do the business. And, most of us want to have multiple trucks and to have that happen is a little surreal. So
it is. Okay. So Mike, let's sum this up. Let's say that, I think that if we sum this podcast up into just a few things, the first thing would be an action step of making sure that you get your finances organized so that you know when you're financially ready to hire. The second step would be identifying what role you need to hire for. And the third step would obviously be taking that leap and making that hire. Anything you'd add to that?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It's critical to have all your ducks in a row before you do it. And I think doing all those steps are going to help you have that. And sometimes I think you ultimately know when it's right. When you just can't do it anymore, it's, that might be a little too long if we're being honest, but that, in the bank accounts increasing and all that kind of stuff. I think it's the right time. So you'll know ultimately, but having everything ready to go and having yourself where it's there's a process is critical, and you've spelled that out there. So
absolutely.
I like it.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And if you like what you hear, then subscribe, follow, share the episode. Thanks a lot. We'll see you. We'll see you again.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Well, Ben, that's a wrap on another episode of The Route to Revenue. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you would hit like, subscribe, and leave us old guys a comment about what we did well. And if we did anything wrong, can it and keep it to yourself.
If today's strategy sparked some ideas for your business, don't keep them to yourself. Share this episode with a fellow entrepreneur who could benefit from these insights.
Remember, building a recurring revenue business, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Take one actionable step from today's discussion and implement it in your business this week.
Want to connect with us between episodes? Find us on Facebook or at our website, We'd love to hear how you're applying these concepts in your own home service business.
And until next time, keep building those recurring revenue streams and stay on the route to revenue.
The route to revenue.
Nice, Ben.